Hello, everyone. I'm Sherri RADEMACHER. I'm the Assistant Director for the Center of International Disability Advocacy and Diplomacy at St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. I'm talking to you today through a sign language interpreter. Our interpreters, most of them are from Sorensen. I'm dressed all in black. I have a lot of shoulder-length gray hair. First off, I'd like to thank the Zero Project for hosting the Deaf Global Forum. According to the World Federation of the Deaf, there are approximately 7 million deaf people worldwide. The WFD continues to actively advocate and promote deaf issues and perspectives in the various forums of the UN. Before I move on to introduce the panelists, I'd really like to thank the Zero Project for hosting the first youth forum. I hope that all of you out there have the opportunity to meet and connect with those youth leaders during the week. These youth leaders are our future, and they're critical for us to get connected with. We are very proud to have 2 deaf students represented here from the Minnesota Academy of the Deaf. We're excited that they're involved this week. Our center has 6 foundational pillars. The first is global academies. Second is education and training. Third is strategic partnerships, research and development, disability policy, and lastly, accessibility and advocacy. I'd like to talk to you about one of the pillars, the global academies. St. Cloud State University offers a year-long certificate in deaf leadership and advocacy. In their first semester, they have graduate courses on the university campus. They're taught by deaf professors in Minnesota. They learn about government organizations and community programs, and they're also able to teach American Sign Language and deaf culture and deaf identity. During the second semester, it'll be a supervised internship. They'll be able to travel to schools for the deaf all over the United States. And those international students will be able to teach their home country language, the sign language from their home, the culture from their home as well. At the same time, they'll be able to provide presentations and learn from leaders in the deaf community and deaf adults that are working at the administrative level, that are teachers, that are staff members as well. The program empowers these international students to develop leadership skills. At the same time, they gain knowledge and understanding about their disability rights. Especially the UNCRPD, and the knowledge of that helps them improve their lives when they return to their home countries. The second program we offer is a youth leadership camp for the deaf. We help those youth develop leadership skills and advocacy skills. And we help them with interactions with one another as they develop those skills. That camp is held in Alnwick Castle in the UK. It's St. Cloud State University's branch campus, and it's also where the Harry Potter was filmed, if you're familiar with that film. The campers are, that camp will be held this summer. the 16th through the 26th of July. It's a really important program. The youth develop those leadership skills, those advocacy skills, and those interactive skills that they need to develop into adults. It's really important that those of us in the advocacy field for disability pass on these skills to our future, which is the youth. They learn independent living skills as well as the political participation that we are focused on in this Zero conference. Now we'll move on to introducing the panel. Everyone on our panel today is either deaf or hard of hearing, and we have a variety of communication needs. Some may sign, some may speak in English, and I'll begin here with Helene JARMER. Helene is an Austrian. She's with the National Council of Austria, and she'll talk about lessons learned for the future deaf women in government.
Thank you. Okay, can I see slides, please? Thank you. So this is my name sign. I'm Helene JARMER. Thank you very much, Sherri, for that introduction and for inviting me on to participate in this panel this afternoon. I work with deaf and not just deaf and hard of hearing people, but the sign language community, and that is something that's very, very important to us, is our rights in sign language. This is something that we have fought for. We fought for legislation in Austria, and as you can see, we have achieved that legal right, and that Article 8 is really, really important to us, that it's recognized as a minority language. It has tried and failed 3 times previously, but we have managed to achieve its passing at the 4th attempt. But this wasn't an individual effort. This took a collective approach in order to achieve this success. I mean, there are further legislative amendments to be made. We are by no means at the end of our journey, but we have achieved some progress to date. Okay, can you see? So this is a representation of the Austrian Parliament. Can you see where the interpreter is in this image? I challenge you to find where the interpreter is there. The first time I went into the Parliament around 9 years ago, my very first day in, that was the first time an interpreter had ever been provided in Austrian Parliament. Now that remains a standard, which is a positive legacy of my time in Parliament, and it's incredibly meaningful for the sign language community in Austria for that representation to exist, for our sign language to exist. And now interpreters are beginning to be provided for additional meetings, committee meetings, and elsewhere in Parliament and in the other workings of government. And interpreter provision is becoming the standard, but also for governmental broadcasts as well, in the provision of in-vision sign language interpreting across Austria. So, whether there were some question marks in governmental discourse of whether they thought that sign language interpreters would be able to keep pace and manage the heavy linguistic effort. Could they actually interpret at the same pace of the discussion? Would this impede governmental discourse? But actually, as time has gone on, it has been shown that interpreters are well able to deal with the cut and thrust of parliamentary discourse. This is something that is very much important around the world. So in the National Action Plan, we have a National Action Plan, so one from 2012 to 2021, and then one for this year. So focusing on human rights, sign language rights across education and elsewhere in civil society. This is something that we've long campaigned for as a community and as an association. So I am the president of the Deaf Society in Austria. That's one of my other roles, and in that role I have engaged heavily with the deaf community in Austria, and from that consultation we've been able to put forward recommendations based on what the community wants and what the community needs. But I think for us here today, in engaging in politics, I think first of all it's important to show that we can make representations for ourselves and for our communities, but whether that's at local, regional or national levels of government. But no one person can represent an entire group on their own. It's very important that we engage with our communities and that we work with our communities and discuss with them. And that everybody is aware that we all have to work together. We have to come together, and it's through that collective support that we're able to put forward recommendations.
Part of the Green Party,
That was very true in my work as within the Green Party. We have to form consensus. We have to form consensus with other parties. And once we find our common purpose and explain what it is that we are looking for, then we can get the progress that we're looking for and move forward as a society. So it's important in these settings, when we are networking in times outside of these sessions, we can discuss with each other. We can also share best practice. So particularly in an international setting such as this. So it's very important that we are not just maintaining blinkers, that we are not just looking at our own context, but we are also looking to build bridges and learn from the examples of other groups and other nations, other parties around the world. Just as an example of this, so this is probably something that's more familiar to people from deaf communities, but the World Federation of the Deaf has the International Week of the Deaf, which takes place in September annually. And the International Day of Sign Languages takes place during that week. I invited politicians, as you can see, so ministers for education, the Minister for Social Work, the Minister for Justice. I invited them to talk about what they do and present on what they do, and that enabled us actually to build connections. So I wasn't focusing solely on our deaf community. I wanted to spotlight our community, raise awareness of what it is that we're doing across federal governmental ministries. So establishing that contact and explaining, and in so doing, developing our networks. Oh, okay, so just to speak further on an Austrian context. So I invited the president of the EUD to speak with leaders in Austria as well. I can see I'm going short for time, so I'm just going to pick some more salient things. So something that we've campaigned for as well, and that we're really hoping will pass very soon, is that Austrian Sign Language will be fully implemented and recognized in law, and what you can see as well in education as well, it's important for us to develop that as part of the wider national curriculum. And what I will finish on is this. I think it's very important, that we focus our efforts on three things. Focus in on what we can achieve and focus on the achievable rather than spreading ourselves too thinly. And particularly when we're lobbying people, when we're lobbying change makers, when we're lobbying for policy, it's very important that we condense that down and we focus on the smaller steps and that we focus on consistent progress rather than bamboozling people with absolutely everything that we could ever possibly hope and dream of. It's important that we really, really hone that down and that we bring people with us on that journey. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you. As I had to keep it so short, but thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alina. Next on our panel, we have Dr. Alim CHANDANI. What can I say? He is American, but he's going to speak to us about international development in the India Deaf Project and his vision on that. Alim?
Hello, everybody. I am Alim. I was born in India and moved to America. I went through the educational system in America, but did end up going back to India. And I'm going to speak a little bit to my experience in going back. I now work as the International Relations Manager at Gallaudet University, and for those who don't know, that is in Washington, D.C. It is the only liberal arts college for deaf students in the United States. I graduated from there with a PhD in education management. Another job that I've had is working for the Enable India. I was a ministry leader for Hear a Million. I'm sure many of you have heard about Enable India here at this conference. They are a wonderful organization in India. I'd like to share a little bit about my experience and what efforts I had in India. Before I go there, though, I would like to first say thank you to St. Cloud University and Gallaudet University for allowing me to be here with you all. It's been an amazing experience. I moved to India in September of 2016. Before moving there, I knew that I would face challenges in India. I knew there would be communication barriers. My parents honestly thought I was nuts for moving to India. Here in America, we have the best laws and policies to support people with disabilities. And they were like, why in the world would you go back to India? My parents left India and specifically moved to the United States for a better education for me. And I told them, I gotta follow my gut. I'm gonna go to India and see what I can do to help and support the deaf community there. And it was the best decision I've ever made. I really don't know if I can sum up that 5-year experience in the 7 minutes I have, so I'll try my best to keep it to the most impactful moments. The title of this presentation is, Are We Monkeys? And that story comes from when I first arrived there. Often when deaf people in India use sign language, they were perceived to look like they were acting like monkeys because they were expressive and they used their hands, because many people didn't understand sign language. There were many misconceptions. It is better now, thankfully, I'm happy to say. Before I go into depth about the types of impact in India, I would like to give you a few facts about the deaf community. There are about 10 million deaf people in India. There are approximately 2 million who use sign language. There are more than 500 deaf schools that could be a public setting, a private school, or a deaf school. However, only 10 of them are bilingual, using both spoken English and Indian Sign Language. And that's really why 95% of the deaf children experience language deprivation in India. There are 450 sign language interpreters in India, again, for the 3 million individuals who are deaf and use sign language, whereas in the US, we have 300,000 deaf people using a much greater percentage of interpreters, so the disparity is quite noticeable between India and the US. Access in India related to captioning and subtitles is really not there. Again, parents thought I was crazy moving to India, but really it was the perfect time. There were many movements happening in India at that time. So when I arrived there in December of 2016 was when the RPWD, the Rights for Persons with Disabilities, was passed. And that law is much like the ADA in the United States. And once that passed in 2016, many deaf individuals were so excited that they could advocate for their rights. Many didn't know how. Again, there was lack of information, there was lack of access, there was lack of education. But that was one of the reasons that I went there. I established a deaf empowerment and leadership center. We trained deaf individuals. They learned about their deaf identity. They learned about deaf history in India and how also to be proud of using Indian Sign Language. We talked about spreading the awareness for access for these deaf individuals and how facilities could also provide access. And really, it worked in an effort to increase their confidence in exercising their rights. We trained over 600 deaf individuals in that 2 years. They were very confident and since then have gone on to create their own social media platforms to spread awareness and their message and story through vlogs and Indian Sign Language, whereas before, no information was available. One could go on the internet and never find any information, whereas now we've seen a drastic change. There's much more visibility there. There's much more access. We'll see Indian Sign Language in movies, etc. In terms of access in India, I had mentioned 450 interpreters are in India, but how they interpret in schools, in colleges, in the court system, there still aren't enough. Interpreters don't have a code of ethics. They are often seen as helpers. They are there to help the deaf person with what they need, not to allow the deaf person to be their own autonomous individual. So the boundaries for the interpreters in terms of where their scope of work lies is not clear. So we had a summit with deaf leaders and interpreters, and we worked through developing a code of ethics, and it was a community effort. We wrote that together, again, with the interpreters, how they can work with the deaf individuals. Once that was in place, the goal was to have that as a standard throughout India. Due to all of the complexities of politics and such, we now have it accessible online, even though it hasn't been accepted as a standard. I know I'm running low on time. The last part that I would like to share with you is during COVID, it was very challenging in India. There was no access to healthcare in India. People did not have information about how to take care of themselves, what was happening. Fortunately, with the support of Enable India and establishing Here a Million, we were allowed to create an online one-stop platform to spread awareness and information about COVID, about topics related to deaf culture, about topics related to individuals' rights. There's a lot of information, and many people now have access to that. And you can find a lot of information from that platform. In terms of next steps, we want to create a collective of best practices for the various fields: technology, education, accessibility, and advocacy. We want to pull in all best practices, bring them all together, and make that available to India. We really want to make sure their rights are stronger. We don't want people to feel isolated. We want to bring them together to create a greater impact. Really, that whole experience, I've seen a change in the deaf community. And they're really starting to advocate for themselves. And even better than that, we have since had one female deaf lawyer who just passed her bar exam, has been advocating for many of the rights of deaf individuals in India. And yet, there's much work still to do. We're very optimistic for India's future and the deaf community. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alim CHANDANI. Is communication okay? Are we set up? For the next panelist? Okay. So I'll pass it to our next panelist. We have Shirly Pinto from Israel. She was a member of Israel's parliament, the Knesset, and she's going to speak about her work in advocacy through political participation.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry they're late. I was confused with the hour, that it's going to be starting 2, so sorry I'm late, but I'm here now. Before I will say all the point that I want to tell you, I want to tell you a story about my family to share with you. My family is deaf. My 2 children is deaf. My husband is also deaf. My 2 children, when I birthed them, I saw that they're deaf because they crying just when they woke up. When they were sleeping, somebody was moving something on the floor, they were feeling that, and then they start crying and waking up. So I saw them deaf from the beginning. They have all the tests, and they fail in the test, but I call it a succeed in the test because they're deaf. I love it, they're deaf. I say thank you. They like me. After they're trying to grow up, I have a dilemma if to do a surgery to hear or not to do it, because they're using the, how do you say it? Hearing here, thank you. And I don't know if to do a cochlea or not to do, because they're starting to sign language, but they cannot hear nothing. Now, in Israel, it's very different from USA or Europe. Our system of education when the children is young, it's not so good because they not help us to learn how to speak or to write correctly in the Hebrew language. So I have this dilemma, what I need to choose, because most of the world is hearing people. They need how to connect them in the future. The time is past, and I think about it a lot. My son grew up to 2 years old, and then me and my husband decided to do a surgery. It was very hard for us because we didn't think that we need to fix them. They're completely perfect like they are. But in Israel, there is no access, there is no interpreter everywhere that you need. So I wanted to have all the tools to succeed in the future. And later I will explain about the interpreter. So we did the surgery, and the time is past. And my son got to start 2 words. He lives in the sign language world, the deaf people and the hearing people. In the house, we're speaking sign language. Everybody is deaf. Grandma and grandpa is deaf. But in school, he's learning the both language. speaking and sign language. And I can see how he growing up and getting better in both language. The second was born, my daughter, and we did the same surgery with my daughter, and she's starting to sign just now. She's 1 year old. And she's signing, it's so beautiful to see her to say rabbit. She's saying a rabbit, rabbit, and so excited about it. And she said a dog, and she's signing a dog. So it's lovely how she learned how to sign. And in the kindergarten, the teacher over there told us that because there is a lot of people that using the surgery, there is not enough deaf people that signing. Everybody is not signing. No, sorry, I'm confused, the interpreter, sorry, I would correct myself. She said that because she's doing the two language, she will start speaking later. She starts signing now, but later she will speak. But she's teaching how to hear, and she will speak later. It's like a tree when you, how do you say it? When you plant it in the garden, it's taking time until you see the tree growing up. But we have to start anyway. So it's make me wonder what's the best way to do it. I decided this is my way. I want my children not just sign language, and both this language together. I think it is the best way. And now, this is my personal story, but I want to tell you how much deaf people there is in Israel. The sign language, there is 6,000 people are deaf the sign language in Israel. There is Jewish, there is Muslim, there is Christian. Thank you. There is everybody 6,000. But hearing people that lost are available to hear, there is two, I don't know how, sorry, the interpreter asked how to say the number. It's most for 500,000 people in Israel. Thank you. I will focus about the deaf people that sign language. We have 3 issues, a big issue, problem in Israel. First of all, interpreter. There is not enough interpreters that can translate. It's like the egg and the chicken story. It's big problem for us. When I came into the Israeli parliament, I was fighting about it a lot because in Israel, the deaf people have only 55 hours for a year to interpret. It means that if you take 55 hours for a year, you have 7 minutes for a day. So we don't have enough, so we keep it all the year. Before I came to the parliament, before I came to a member in the Israeli parliament, I go to the minister and to the government and talk with them about it and trying to change it. And they tell me that only 30% from the money that they give to the interpreter is used. There is a lot of money that people deaf not using for interpreters, so you doesn't need interpreter. You doesn't need it. I try to explain them that deaf people does not use it, not because he doesn't need it, because they keep it. They're so afraid to rest it, that something will happen and they did not get an interpreter. They didn't understand the problem, of course. They have a question? Time, thank you. So they didn't understand the problem. I become a member in the Israeli parliament, and bigger than 55 hours to 70 hours for a year, it's more big, but it's the same problem because the interpreter, 20 euro per hour. that how much the government pay for interpreters, so they doesn't want to translation for a deaf person. If they will come, if doesn't want to work it like interpreter because it's not enough money, so they taken the work to a second job. So if you're looking for an interpreter, you say, oh, I'm not available, I'm working in another job. So it's a big problem. It's like the egg and the chicken. So I work about it very hard. We got better. The hours is bigger, so I know that the time is lost, so I need to finish. Sorry. Thank you. And thank you to Liat.
All right, thank you. Thank you so much, Shirly Pinto. Thank you. All right. And our next speaker on our panel is Amber Hamilton. And just so you know, she's one of our youth delegates here at the conference, so we're excited about that. Amber's going to talk about youth leadership and influencing our future. Hello, everyone. My name is Amber Hamilton. This is my name sign. And I really just want to share my experience with you growing up as a person who is deaf. I'm a student at the Minnesota Academy for the Deaf, and I've grown up going to school there. I've grown up with my peers there. I have close relationships with everybody I go to school with, and I have open access at my school. All of my teachers know sign language. No one speaks in English. Everyone speaks in American Sign Language, and there's even a dorm in my school for students that live far away. They can stay there at the school, and all of the dorm staff sign as well. But in my experience, I go home every day after school, and a lot of the students do. And when I go home, no one at my house uses sign language. They speak English. And so it's very difficult to communicate because we don't share a language. It's really frustrating. We struggle, and it's a challenge for a lot of deaf children who go home to parents who don't know sign language, and it's very difficult to communicate with them. We definitely love each other, we love our families, and we still try very hard to communicate with one another. We feel like there's a hearing world and there's a deaf world. And when we're in the hearing world, we have open access to communication and everything. And when we're in the deaf world, in the deaf world, we have open access. And when we're in the hearing world, we do not. We face challenges, we can't communicate with one another, and we feel lonely and isolated at times. We're also faced with discrimination in the hearing world. We are put in a box, if you will, and we have to survive. It's like with the game Roadblocks, if you've heard of that before. We face challenges at every turn. It's an online game with chats. If you've ever played Roblox, it's an online game with chats that's not accessible to me because there's chats in English. And so we're talking to one another, and we get discriminated against because English isn't our first language, and we're not often fluent in it. And so we're thought of as less intelligent, perhaps. And so we have to be really careful. I can't just chat as I normally would really fast to my friends and not worry about my English skills. No one is worried about my communication in the deaf world, but I'm looked down because sometimes I'm not perfect in English in the hearing world, and in that game in particularly. We tell people often that we can do anything we want to do except hear. We have ways to communicate. We can communicate with people that can hear. We can use speech-to-text technology if we need to, but it's still the hearing world that really causes the challenges and roadblocks for us. The key for us is to learn, and we're told at school that we must learn leadership skills, and we're doing that. We're learning how to be leaders, but at the end of the day, I'm just a regular deaf person. We're told and we believe that it's important because we're young, we have a different perspective than those that are a bit older. And I'm really excited and I'm really happy to be here. I was happy to be invited to be part of the youth delegation and to learn more about being a leader and changing things for people who are disabled. I think it's important to have diversity in these spaces so you get everybody's view from different disabled populations. And I thank you. Thank you, Amber. Our next deaf panelist is Terry Wilding. Terry is an American, and he's going to be talking about global competencies and critical leadership skills.
If I could get the PowerPoint, please. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Terry. I am the superintendent for the Minnesota Academies for the Deaf, and I run one of the schools that I run is the one that Amber attends. I'm thrilled to be here to share a little bit of my experience growing up as a deaf person. I was born to a deaf family with deaf parents and 9 siblings, all deaf. We have over 50 deaf family members, so sign language was a part of my life from day one. I had many privileges and opportunities. I had access to language, I had leadership role models, and all of that was instilled in me as a leader. And that's what I try to provide my students. I try to bring that to them. So I'm going to share a few points and a few thoughts to consider. I've seen various leadership issues. I've had 54 years as a deaf person, 54 years experience. And I've had many leadership opportunities within the schools, the community, state and federal levels. And honestly, what it comes down to is successful leaders are those that have had access to language. They've been able to partake in the conversations and the discussions that are happening in the world. Very simply put, they have a seat at the table. They can have access to talking with their families. Many deaf children don't have what I had. I see the impact of language deprivation on the ability to take part in leadership, political participation, among many things. So at the school, we really work to change that and provide the access to communication and language from birth to adulthood. There are many misconceptions out there about how language development happens. Many people think that you must have hearing and be able to speak to have access to language, and that's simply not true. We're definitely trying to change that. We're trying to explain with research. Gallaudet University has a visual language learning research that shows much of this. The mind doesn't care what language it is, if it's spoken, if it's signed. The modality doesn't matter. Language matters. And it's important for us to teach the world that our children can learn, regardless of being able to hear or not. So at the school, it is our goal to really include as many languages and language modalities as possible. We include both sign language and English, and we start that at a very young age. Shirley was talking about having to pick between a cochlear implant or sign language, and we say there is no one or the other. It doesn't matter the language, the student, the child will learn. We expose them to language, then they can find out for them as they grow up what works better for them. They can work between either one, have both. Why not give all options instead of parents being forced to pick just one and then it end up not being the one that works best for the child? And then there are even fewer options. So our goal is to provide all of the options to the children. We really believe that that is key. In developing leadership skills, we have to assume it's not going to happen on its own. There has to be planning and strategy and opportunities provided. It's not just what one reads from a book in a classroom. There's so much more learning and getting out of the classroom, and we really try to put that into practice and provide the opportunities for leaderships, club participation, sports, and the list goes on. Hearing individuals have opportunities in leadership, so must our deaf students. We also can't assume that things are known. Very often we have to explain explicitly various points. Deaf students don't have that incidental learning of hearing what's going on in the environment around them, and sometimes that requires direct instruction. So we are very mindful and intentional about that. We provide the support, great results happen. As many have talked about, cooperation is important. Supporting the community, providing role models, and having that participation, the students will thrive. High expectations is also crucial. Instead of, oh, that poor deaf kid, we're gonna have to help them. Instead, send them out, let them do their thing. Just as we had the youth forum here this year, they're flying from America to Austria. What an amazing opportunity to learn from all of these role models. It's something that we've never had before. These students, it's a new experience for them and an opportunity, and again, a place for high expectation for them to succeed. Talking about access, there are many laws that regulate the court system, and those are great. We have those in place. Supports are increasing, but the access is just the minimum. Really much more is needed. So let's talk about a building. Maybe that building has one ramp, but 30 entrances into the building. Is one ramp really equal access? In a pub, you might have 30 TVs, but only one has captioning. Is that really equal access? So we want to look at what access is. I shouldn't, as a deaf individual, be required to take extra steps that a hearing person could do with just one, and I'm going through 6 different steps to get to the same endpoint. This can apply to employment, schooling, and facilities in the public. And it's really important to hear the students' stories. We want to be able to get input on them. We want to talk about culture and identity. And not just about deafness, but about other individuals, other disability groups, other ethnicities, other genders. We want to make sure that we are inclusive and considering of all of those identities, and that's part of the children's growth. And again, talking about access as a minimum. Thank you for the reminder on time. We really want to build the relationships. As a deaf individual, I have, again, 54 years of that lived experience as a deaf person. I know what the challenges are. I know what the solutions can be. And I can continue to help solutions to support others. They can take part in the community and have a brighter future. Lastly, I want to just share this quote with you. The act of simply putting a deaf child in a room with their peers does not mean that they are included. We need to do more than just that. We need to provide the support, the instruction, the language, access to being fully participating in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. All right, and we'll move on to our final panelist, and that is Lidia Best. She is British and Polish as well. She's going to speak to us about assistive technology for access and equity.
Thank you. Thank you very much to organizers of the symposium to invite me here today. It's an absolute pleasure. And I absolutely enjoy the previous speakers' presentations. So, to give you a little bit of background of who I am, I'm someone who was born hearing, and as a teenager had to start use hearing aids due to illness which robbed me of part of my hearing. But for many years I used hearing aids, and now for past 10 years I have to use cochlear implant because my hearing no longer is good enough to use hearing aids. And a little bit like Alim, I am in between two countries. Despite leaving Poland many years ago, I still have very strong connections there, and I observe what's going on there. And this, in some ways, drives me constantly in my work. So let's bring a little bit more of what we do at the European Federation of Hard of Hearing People and who we are. One of the things I keep hearing, especially from the youth representative, the hearing and the deaf world. Well, there is a news for everyone. There is a third world. Hard of hearing often feels like in-betweeners. We are not really in the deaf world, and we are not really in the hearing world, where we are. So we work most of the time towards barrier-free Europe, just exactly as the topic here. And I would like to bring a kind of terminology we use and why we use hard of hearing and how we define our community. It's a community of people who experience hearing loss and whose usual means of communication is by speech, like myself. And that includes those who have become totally deaf after acquisition of the speech. And that's the source from the International Federation of Hard of Hearing People. And a little bit on the figures. We have 5% of the world population of 466 million people who have disabling hearing loss. And that's the people who experience more than 35 decibels of hearing loss in the audiograms. But of course, individuals have different ways of how they experience their difficulties. And in the European Union alone, we have 57 million citizens who self-reported hearing difficulties, and it was research organized together with EFHOH partners, where people identified with a hearing loss and they received hearing aids. But what I also found interesting, especially previous panel before us on aging, when you look at this, the 1/3 of people are over 65 years of age who are representing people with disabling hearing loss. And that number is growing with age. Really? Only? Oh my goodness. So I will not be making this presentation, this slide, because we know, all of us, UNCRPD, but how we communicate and interact, and there are a lot of harmful assumptions in general. Not all people who are deaf or hard of hearing rely on hearing aids or cochlear implants alone. We just heard it. But not all people who are deaf or hard of deaf, as a term used to describe us all, sign language users and none, use sign language. And then not all people who are deaf or hard of hearing can lip read, especially in a very good way to support themselves. I do, but not everyone. But yet, policies and systems in places do not reflect our diversity. And take especially the political participation and independent living. Policies, national interpretation of UNCRPD and equality laws often does not include hard of hearing and deafened people. When they need access to captioning, they need access to hearing aids, for example, etc. Accessible buildings, how about hearing loops, to be included as a norm? And political participation, let alone hearing loops, speech-to-text in the political debates, in the parliaments, etc. On top of this, we have societal attitudes in society in general, including older people. I need to finish, sorry. Our confidence in requesting support is really not strong enough. And of course, we had a general independent living, COVID briefings, especially in many countries, there was either no captioning, no live captioning on television, on the briefings, which are important, or on top of that, the captioning provided was unreadable, unusable. There is a huge need for providing just simply universal design in the services, and it's being ignored. Access to health as well. people who are older cannot hear very well, yet appointments to the healthcare providers are often by phone only, nothing else. And in this case, will conclude quickly. Hard of hearing people have specific needs, but their needs are often not including national plans and strategies. We work towards changing the situation, and we support our members and policymakers to ensure that hearing support, such as hearing loops, subtitling, quality of speech-to-text provided, is made available to ensure our full participation. And that, when we say sometimes, when captioning is essential for some, is useful for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Lidia. And we are all out of time, but we want to say to you all that we share the responsibility of keeping the doors open. And if you find one that's closed, that we need to partner together to get them open. And that might be the hospitals or the educational system. And if you see a TV without captioning on, you help us get that captioning turned on, for example. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you to our interpreters. Farewell.